How are you guys doing? Today is Saturday, October 30th, 2021. I'm James Sims, and for this episode of The Elite, I'm going to do an elite individual profile on Devin Booker. The elite shooting guard for the Phoenix Suns turns 25 today, and my intention with this episode is, of course, to shed light on the accolades, achievements, and accomplishments that Devin Booker has had as a basketball player before he made it to the big stage, where he was at Kentucky, didn't even start a game, all the way to where he's gotten through the league and established himself as a perennial all-star, among other things. If you're unfamiliar with Devin Booker's game, he stands at about 6'5", 206 pounds. If I were to really kind of go through his strengths, on defense, he's incredibly athletic and mobile, but he's very known for being a high-volume scorer because, of course, considering how tough it is to make it into the NBA, considering how there's about 12, 15 people on 30 different teams for about 450 total players that can make up the NBA, it's very tough for someone to, one, make it to the All-Star game 2 years in a row, which Devin Booker just did this year. Not to mention that it's incredibly tough for a player to average at least 20 points in the league. He's done it for the last 6 years. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of background and go through what makes Devin Booker while I try to paint the picture of who he is, especially as he is elite through the 2021 calendar year. So if you don't know Devin Booker like that, he's originally from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He would establish himself as a top high school prospect playing in Granville, Michigan, to the point where he would eventually end up getting a scholarship to play basketball at the University of Kentucky after he was named a McDonald's All-American. He would go and play for one season under John Calipari. His freshman season, which would go down as his age 18 season, would be the 2014-15 season. In this season, Kentucky would go on to they would go on to make it to the Final Four. This was the closest that John Calipari had made it to the national championship since his actual championship win in the 2012 season. Ever since, John Calipari has actually not made it to the Final Four since Devin Booker's lone season there. But taking a look at what Devin Booker was able to do in that season, he did not start a single one of those 38 games in his one-and-done season, yet he was a first-round pick. He averaged 21 minutes per game, and he would finish averaging 10 points per game and 21 minutes per game. He averaged 10 points a game while shooting 47% from the field, 41% from three, and 83% from the foul line. Incredible numbers. Alongside his 10 points, he averaged 2 rebounds, just over an assist, and just under half a steal per game. But in his one season at Kentucky, which saw them make it all the way to the finale, but would not see them eventually win it, Devin Booker would eventually be taken with the 13th overall pick in the 2015 NBA draft. The two players that were picked above him that are members of the elite are the number 1 overall pick, the elite center playing for the Timberwolves, Karl Anthony Towns, and D'Angelo Russell, the elite point guard, who also happens to play for the Minnesota Timberwolves as well. Looking at players from Kentucky, he was taken behind Karl Anthony Towns. He was taken behind Willie Cauley-Stein as well, and he was also the pick behind Trey Lyles. He was the 4th player taken off that Kentucky team. He was taken with the 13th overall pick, so he was still a lottery pick. And ever since he joined the Phoenix Suns, he's really kind of worked his way up into showing people why, even though he didn't start a game for Kentucky, he deserved to be a lottery pick. So his NBA career would start with his age 19 season in 2015-2016. In that season, Devin Booker would earn his way into the starting lineup as he started 51 of the 26 matchups he would play in a season where the Phoenix Suns would finish with a 23-59 record. This would go on to be the 6th consecutive season since the Suns had made the playoffs since the 2009-2010 season. In Devin Booker's rookie season, he would go on to average 28 minutes a game, the only season he's ever averaged below 30 minutes a game. In the 76 games he played, he would average 13.8 points alongside 2.5 rebounds, 2.5 assists, and just over half a steal per game. While averaging 13.8 points, he was shooting 42% from the field, 34% from three, and 84% from the line, which are all incredible percentages to shoot from. Regardless, at the end of the 2015-2016 season, he would go on to be, he would go on to be named to the All-Rookie First Team after not starting a single game at Kentucky and being named the SEC Sixth Man of the Year, making second team All-SEC. But following his very first season at Phoenix, he would start to turn it around. In his second season in 2016-2017, in his age 20 season, Devin Booker would start all 78 of the games that he would play for a Phoenix Suns team that would finish with a 24-58 record. They won one more game than the previous season, but they finished with the worst record in the entire West. This would be the most games that Devin Booker would start and play in an entire season, while he averaged 35 minutes a game. That's more than 7 more minutes what he averaged his freshman or his rookie season. In his sophomore season, he would go on to average 22 points per game, averaging 8 more points per game more than he did his rookie season. He would average his 22 points while taking 7 more shots per game. He shot 42.3% from the field, exactly what he did his rookie season. He would see his 3-point percentage tick up from 34% to 36%. He would see his free throw percentage drop from 84 to 83, but roughly it was about what he was doing before, but just with a higher volume. Alongside his 22 points, he averaged 3 rebounds, 3 assists, and just under a steal per game. And in his age 20 season, many people are starting to recognize Devin Booker for the scoring talent that he is, because of course it is incredibly tough for a 20-year-old to average 20 points per game in the league, especially considering he's not incredibly physically overpowering. Following his first 2 seasons in which he didn't make the playoffs, he would go on to start all 54 games of the 2017-18 season, his age 21 season. In his second season as a full-time starter, the Phoenix Suns would finish with a 21-61 record. They lost 3 more games in the previous season, and they would go on to miss the playoffs for what would be the 8th consecutive season. But of course, still, or I guess this would be the 8th consecutive season in which the Suns would miss the playoffs. In that season, Devin Booker would see his minutes hover about the same, averaging 34.5 minutes per game. He would average 24.9 points per game, which at that time was a career high. He did all this while shooting 1 more shot per game. He would shoot 43% from the field, which is 9%, or which is just almost a percent better than what he did the previous season. He would go on and shoot 38% from the three, which even today is the highest 3-point percentage he even shot in his career. In 2017-18, he even went on to win the 3-point contest, just to show that his 3-point shooting was definitely on point in his 3rd season in the league. Not to mention, he also shot 87.8% from the foul line. That is the 2nd highest free throw percentage he's ever shot from the foul line in his career. Alongside his career high 25 points, he was also averaging 4.5 rebounds, just over a full more rebound than what he was averaging the previous year. He averaged 4.7 assists, which is 1.3 more assists than what he was averaging the previous year. All this while still hovering around 0.9 steals and 0.3 blocks for the entirety of the season. At the conclusion of the season, of course, even though the Suns were not named a playoff team, Devin Booker, of course, being a 24-point per game score, does not go unnoticed in the NBA. This would carry over into Devin Booker's 4th season in the NBA, his age 22 season in 2018-2019. In that season, he would go on to start all 64 of the games that he would play in a season where the Suns finished with a 19-63 record. They won 2 less games than the previous season. This would be the 3rd consecutive season they finished with the worst record in the West, and the 4th consecutive season they finished with a bottom 2 record in the conference. In his 4th season in the NBA, Devin Booker would average 35 minutes a game. And he would see his points jump up from 24.9 to 26.6. This would be his career high even to date, even tied with what he would do the next year. His 26.6 is the highest he's ever averaged in a season. He was never averaged higher. He did all this while shooting the same amount of shots he shot the year before, but his field goal percentage would jump up from 43% to 46%, jumping up 3.5%. He would go on to shoot 33% from the foul line, which at that point was the lowest he ever shot from three in his NBA, if you exclude what he's doing this season, it is the lowest full season that Devin Booker has ever shot from the three-point line. And he would also go on to shoot 86% from the free throw line, alongside his career high 26.6 points. He averaged 4.1 rebounds, which would be the second consecutive season he averaged at least 4 rebounds. And he averaged 6.8 assists, which even to date is the most assists that Devin Booker has ever averaged in a season. He averaged just over 2 more what he did the previous year, and he would average just about 0.9 steals and 0.2 blocks with what he was doing before. And his 4th season in the league would be the only year in which he averaged at least 4 turnovers per game in a season. Regardless, after that 4th season, Devin Booker still was not necessarily named an all-star, but to be a 26-point per game scorer is a very tough feat to accomplish. And even though the Suns would not go on to make the playoffs after his first 4 seasons, Devin Booker would never really go back to returning to that sort of player, because in his 5th season in 2019-2020, in his age 23 season, he was named an all-star for the very first time in his NBA career. He would start all 70 of the games he played in a shortened NBA season, which was impacted by COVID. And in this season, the Phoenix Suns would finish with a 34-39 record. If many people aren't familiar, they were invited to the bubble to play for their playoff lives, even though they were eventually eliminated. They won every single game of the bubble for them to eventually not go on to make the playoffs. That would be a memorable feat, as I believe Devin Booker was named the MVP of the bubble. But looking out at the 2019-2020 NBA season as a whole, Devin Booker would go on to start all 70 of those games, in addition to being named an all-star for the first time. He would average 35.9 minutes per game, which is the most minutes he's averaged to date in his NBA career. He would average 26.6 points, just what he was doing the year before, except this time he was actually named an all-star for it. He took 1 less shot than he averaged 1 less attempt per game than he did the year before, but he would see his field goal percentage shoot up from 46.7 to 48.9. His 48.9% field goal percentage is the highest field goal percentage Devin Booker has ever registered in a season in his NBA career. He would go on to shoot 35% from 3, which is virtually on par with what he was doing before then. This would be the 3rd season in his first 5 years in the league in which he shot at least 35% from 3. And since 2019-20, Devin Booker has not shot 35% from 3. He would also go on to shoot 91.9% from the foul line. This would be the only time in Devin Booker's career he would make at least 90% of his free throws. So, of course, this will go down in history as well. Alongside his tied for career high at 26.6 points per game, he would also average 4.2 rebounds, which at that point was the second most he's ever averaged in a season. He averaged 6.5 assists, which is also the second most he's ever averaged in a season, and he has not averaged at least 6 assists a game since then. He would also average 0.7 steals per game, which is a tick below what he did the previous 3 seasons. He averaged 0.3 blocks. And at the conclusion of the season, even though he was named an all-star for the very first time, the Suns were just they were really kind of just a hair away from making the playoffs. But of course, that would all change the very next year in Devin Booker's age 24 season. In his age 24 season in 2020-2021, the last full season of the NBA, he will go on to start all 67 of the games he played in a season where the Phoenix Suns finished with a 51-21 record, finished with the second best record in the West, and made it to the playoffs for the first time since 2010, following their 10-year of course, that's how long a decade is, their decade-long playoff drought. In this season, Devin Booker would go on to start all 67 of the games he played. He averaged 33.9 minutes per game, which is 2 less minutes than what he averaged his first All-Star season. Yet, he would go on to average 25.6 points per game. This would be 1 point less than he did the previous 2 seasons. However, this would be the 4th season in a row Devin Booker averaged at least this will be the 3rd season he's averaged at least 25, and the 5th season in his first 6 years that he's averaged at least 20 points per game. A very tough feat to replicate, especially considering how many players there are in the NBA and how there's only one ball at a time. He will go on to shoot 48% from the field that season. He shot 34% from 3 and 86.7% from the foul line. In that 4-year stretch, that's actually the lowest free throw percentage he's ever shot in a full NBA season. And at the same time, he would also go on to average 4.2 rebounds per game. The 4th season in a row, he's averaged at least 4 rebounds. He averaged 4.3 assists at the end of the season. And for the first time, the Phoenix Suns made the playoffs in his tenure there, following a half decade of finishing at the very bottom of the conference. Once the Suns made the playoffs, they would end up beating the defending champions Lakers in the very first matchup, in the very first series in 6 games. They would end up sweeping the conference, or they would end up sweeping the Denver Nuggets in the conference semifinals, as the Nuggets did include the NBA's MVP from the season, Nikola Jokic. They got swept. The Suns would end up beating the Los Angeles Clippers in the conference finals, as the Clippers were without Kawhi Leonard, I want to say. It was either Kawhi Leonard or Paul George. I want to say it was Kawhi Leonard. And then the Phoenix Suns would eventually go to the NBA Finals. And then after winning the first 2 games of the NBA Finals, they would eventually end up losing in 6 games to the Milwaukee Bucks. Taking a look at how the Phoenix Suns fared, at least looking at how Devin Booker fared within that series as is. In the finals, Devin Booker averaged 28 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 4 assists. The Milwaukee Bucks just were the stronger and deeper team when it came down to it at the end. And that would show that even in his only tenure in the playoffs, he's made it farther than a lot of people did in his very first trip. And following that season in which the Suns finished up as the runner-up, this would lead us to where we are at this point in the season. At this point in the NBA season, he's played 6 games for a Phoenix Suns team that is sitting roughly at about the middle of the West right now. This season, he's averaging just under about 25 points per game, averaging about 5 rebounds, 5 assists, but I mean, it's only been a 6-game sampling size. So, of course, as it pertains to Devin Booker, I'm going to wait for the season to, of course, play out. And then by the time his next birthday rolls around, I'll be able to give a full run through of what he was able to do this season. But if you look at what Devin Booker's career is, it has been a 6-year buildup to what could possibly be an amazing all-star run. This is a player that's averaged 20 points a game for every season he's been in the NBA, except his first season, considering that he wasn't even a starter in college. And just the way Devin Booker is continuing to grow, especially as an offensive threat, but definitely as a defensive player, as the Phoenix Suns become a much stronger team, is really starting to show that this is the time in Devin Booker's career where many people are expecting him to produce. And of course, this will be a very interesting moment in his career where he may either decide to spend the rest of his career with the Phoenix Suns, or he may decide to spread his wings, fly elsewhere, and possibly chase a championship with a better roster of players, or a better chance for a better roster of players. Devin Booker's career at this point isn't necessarily a blank slate, because he's already been able to prove himself and he's been able to decorate the slate. Yet, at 25, it's very possible that the very best of his basketball hasn't been played yet, and I honestly, as a sports fan, cannot wait to see what Devin Booker does. Once again, today is October 30th, 2021. I, of course, want to thank the NBA Pro Ref and the college basketball reference websites, along with the NBA websites, for giving me all the stats and figures that I need. I want to, of course, wish Devin Booker a happy 25th birthday. If you already get a chance to watch him, he's wearing number 1 for the Phoenix Suns. And of course, I want to thank everyone involved, and I want to thank everyone for listening to all 20 minutes of this piece. I hope all is well, and I'll catch you with another episode tomorrow. Until then, peace out.